Caleb is the only human student at an alien university where his very biology confuses and shocks the brightest minds. The aliens believe his single heart and simple body design make survival impossible, but Caleb's stubbornness and unpredictable nature prove otherwise. When their research trip goes wrong, Caleb and the alien students are stranded on a dangerous, alien world filled with deadly creatures. Facing impossible odds with no backup technology, Caleb must rely on his human grit and creativity to keep everyone alive. The story is tense and emotional, full of suspense and dramatic moments where survival means more than science can explain. Caleb floated in the middle of the zero-gravity stasis field. It felt strange, like being frozen in amber. His arms stretched out wide, almost like a lost hero. Around him, 300 alien students stared in awe. Above him hovered a giant hologram showing his insides, his heart, lungs, and blood flowing. The alien's eyes were wide with shock and disbelief. Professor Glorp, a strange purple creature with many brains and mechanical claws, made excited noises through his suit. "Look here," he said, pointing at Caleb's heart. "One heart only. No backup. How can this be?" A murmur ran through the crowd. Some gasped in horror. One alien fainted, its brains shutting down to protect itself from the shock. Caleb tried to smile, but he was tired. This was his third demonstration this week. Being the only human at Tucker Polytechnic University was not what he expected. It felt less like learning and more like being a strange exhibit. From the front row, Serial, a proud cathar with sleek fur and sharp amber eyes, spoke sharply. "This design is weak. A single failure and your whole system would collapse. It breaks every rule of biology." She looked at him as if he was a puzzle she could not solve. But Professor Glorp only laughed. "Yet here you are. Moving, breathing, even annoyed." Caleb groaned quietly. 6 months ago, this scholarship had seemed like a dream. He wanted to study alien biology, learn from the best minds in the galaxy. But instead, he spent most days being poked and scanned, while aliens whispered about his strange human body. No backup hearts, no double organs, just a single fragile machine that kept going. The stasis field released him with a soft hum. Caleb's feet hit the metal floor harder than he wanted. Earth gravity was different here. He had to be careful not to seem clumsy. "Thank you, Student Caleb, for another illuminating demonstration," Glorp said, clapping his mechanical claws, or at least trying to. The class began to empty. Serial stayed behind, staring at the hologram. "Your liver, it can regenerate. It grows back after damage," she said quietly, almost as if tasting a bitter truth. "Yeah," Caleb said. "It takes time, but it works." She shook her head. "No backup organs. You survive because your cells themselves are tough and repair themselves. It is chaotic, and dangerous." Caleb shrugged. "We're stubborn." "Stubbornness is not a survival trait," Serial said coldly. "It depends on what you're trying to survive," Caleb replied. She watched him for a moment, then turned away. Caleb packed his bag, wishing the day was over. The alien students whispered and stared as he passed. Some were fascinated. Some thought humans were a biological joke. Later, on the shuttle to the planet Vidya, Caleb sat quietly. The ship hummed around him, but he felt the slight jitters of the inertial dampeners failing for a moment. It was barely noticeable, but Caleb felt it deep in his bones. He had grown up in a world where machines often acted like they were barely holding on. This was the same feeling. "Do you feel that?" Caleb asked Sel, a Zephyr student beside him. "No." "What?" she said, not looking up from her data pad. The shuttle lurched again, this time harder. Lights flickered for a moment. "Minor technical difficulty," the pilot said, but his voice was sharp now. "We are initiating emergency landing procedures. Please remain calm." Alarms screamed through the cabin. Caleb gripped his armrests. He was still alive, but this was not a smooth landing. The shuttle hit the ground with a heavy jolt, throwing everyone forward. "Sound off," Glorp ordered. "We live." "Still breathing," Caleb said. The pilot said the research station was 12 kilometers away. "We will hike through the preserve," Glorp added. Serial checked her suit. "The suppression field is down. It's impossible." Outside the shuttle, the alien world looked strange and wild. The orange sky cast long shadows over twisted trees shaped like spirals of metal wool. Suddenly, a deep roar shook the ground. Large creatures with 3 huge eyes appeared on the hills. They looked like giant cows but far more terrifying. The herd charged. "Run!" Caleb shouted. Most aliens froze, paralyzed by fear. Caleb grabbed a small Zephyr and dove to the side. The ground shook as massive hooves pounded the earth. But behind the herd, sleek black hunters moved with deadly grace. The predators, called Korodax, used the stampede as cover. One turned and smiled with too many sharp teeth. "We must move," Caleb yelled. The aliens hesitated, calculating odds. Caleb's heart pounded in his chest. The adrenaline rushed through his veins like a flood. "Go," he shouted. The group scrambled toward a cave on a nearby hill. Caleb stayed last, keeping watch. The Korodax reached the hill but stopped. They waited patiently. Predators do not need to rush when their prey is trapped. Inside the cave, Caleb checked his suit. Nutrient dispenser dead. Emergency beacon dead. They were alone. Outside, the world grew darker. Rain started to fall, threatening to flood the cave. "We must build a barrier," Caleb said. "Rocks, anything." Serial nodded. "Your logic is correct." With the help of the aliens, Caleb organized a defense. Stones piled against the cave mouth just as water poured down the hill. The predators watched, waiting. Hours passed. The cave was crowded and quiet except for the rain. Some aliens began to crack under pressure. A young mollusk went into shock. Caleb wrapped her in a blanket and talked softly, trying to calm her. Serial watched him. "You are not just stubborn. You are different." Caleb smiled. "Sometimes different is better." Later, Caleb lit a flare at the cave entrance. The bright fire burned fiercely, causing the predators to retreat. "We only have a few flares," Caleb said. "We need a plan." Serial studied the predators. "They are endurance hunters, built to chase for hours." Caleb nodded. "Then I'll run. I'll lead them away. You get the others to safety." "No," Serial said. "You can't do this alone." Caleb grinned. "I have one heart, no backup, and a stupid metabolism. I'm their perfect target." With that, he lit another flare and ran out of the cave, screaming. The predators hesitated, confused by the blazing human. The chase was on. Caleb's lungs burned like fire. His legs felt like heavy weights, but he ran harder than he ever had. Behind him, the sounds of the Korodax pack grew louder, heavy footsteps pounding on the rocky ground, their many legs moving with deadly speed. The flare in his hand was almost out of fuel, but it was still bright enough to confuse the predator's infrared vision. To them, Caleb was a blazing, wild target, hot, fast, and desperate. His heart, the single fragile engine inside his chest, beat wildly. It pushed oxygen to his burning muscles as if it knew failure was not an option. His body had no backup systems, no spare parts to fall back on. Just raw determination and stubborn willpower. Ahead of him, the terrain changed. Rocky slopes gave way to a steep scree field, a slope covered in loose stones and unstable ground. It was dangerous, even in daylight. But Caleb was counting on one thing: the Korodax were heavy, powerful creatures built for long hunts, not quick footwork on loose rocks. He pushed himself harder. His breaths came sharp and fast. Sweat ran down his face, mixing with dirt and tears. His muscles screamed, but he ignored them. He had to keep moving. Behind him, one of the lead predators reached the scree field. The heavy beast's feet slipped, sending small avalanches of stones tumbling down the hill. It tried to slow down but the momentum was against it. Another predator, close behind, was caught in the slide and crashed into the first with a loud roar of frustration. Caleb kept running. The unstable ground made the chase messy, breaking the pack's tight formation. The predators had to slow down, careful not to lose balance. He felt his legs burning harder, the familiar sting of lactic acid building. His muscles were switching to anaerobic metabolism, meaning they were running without enough oxygen and creating acid. Pain like this would have stopped most creatures. But Caleb's single heart pumped on, keeping him alive. It skipped a few beats, warning him to slow down, but he pushed through. At the top of the scree, Caleb spotted his next obstacle, a deep ravine, maybe 6 meters across. It was a wide gap, and the far side was rocky and uneven. Caleb's heart pounded faster as he prepared for the jump. He glanced back. The predators had recovered and were closing in, their breathing heavy but steady, built for endurance, not speed. Caleb took a deep breath and sprinted toward the edge. With all his strength, he leapt into the dark space. For a terrifying moment, he was flying, weightless. Then he hit the far side hard. The landing was rough, but he rolled and got back to his feet. His legs wobbled but held him. Behind him, one of the predators tried to jump the ravine but failed. It fell with a terrible noise, crashing down the rocky slope. Caleb didn't wait. He ran again, adrenaline fueling every step. He could feel his muscles screaming, his heart racing faster than ever. The predators were scattered now, confused and hurt. They would regroup soon, but Caleb had bought time. His emergency glucose cylinders, liquid energy shots from cereal, were running low. He took one more, feeling the sugar flood his system. It burned his throat but gave him strength. His vision blurred at the edges. Colors shifted and bent like waves. He was close to collapse. The glowing orange sky began to darken as the alien sun set. Caleb found a twisted tree and collapsed beneath it, gasping for air. His vision swam, and he felt like the ground was moving beneath him. He heard rustling nearby and turned his head slowly, expecting another predator. Instead, a strange creature approached, a small 6-legged animal that looked like a cross between a rabbit and a disco ball. Its eyes glittered with shifting colors that reflected the starlight. Caleb managed a weak smile. "Nice night for a run, huh?" The creature made a strange sound, almost musical, then hopped away into the dark. Caleb closed his eyes and tried to calm his racing heart. He needed shelter, water, and rest. Most of all, he needed to stay alive. Using his emergency beacon's compass, he pointed himself northeast, 12 kilometers to the research shelter. Every step was agony. Every breath was a battle. But Caleb kept moving. By dawn, his body was a map of pain, muscles torn and aching, dehydration creeping in, exhaustion like nothing he had ever known. The emergency shelter appeared like a shining promise in the morning haze. It was a clean, simple structure made of metal and plastic, untouched by the wild world around it. Caleb hurried to the door, only to find it locked. His knock echoed loudly. The door slid open quickly. Serial stood there, her perfect fur now dusty and messy. Her eyes were wide with relief. "You're alive," she said, voice low. "Statistically, I did not expect this." Caleb smiled weakly. "I'm full of surprises." Inside, the shelter was crowded. 20 alien students sat or lay, tired but safe. Even Professor Glorp looked more alive than before. "You distracted the predator successfully," Glorp said, his 3 brains glowing with excitement. Though your behavior violated many safety protocols. Caleb slumped against the wall, exhausted. Sometimes, you have to break the rules. Blue, a mollusk student wrapped in an emergency blanket, handed Caleb a bottle of water. The supplies here are working, she said softly. Food, water, medical gear. Any word on rescue? Caleb asked. Serial says the suppression grid will come back in 6 hours, Glorp replied. Communications are still down, but then rescue will be automatic. Caleb drained half the bottle in one long gulp. His body was failing fast. Serial scanned him with a handheld device. Muscle damage in many places. Your lactate levels are 4 times normal. Adrenaline is nearly gone. How are you still conscious? Mostly stubbornness, Caleb said. She smiled faintly. Hold still. This will hurt. She activated a healing device from the medical kit. Electrical needles sent sharp pulses through Caleb's muscles. His torn side stopped screaming pain, replaced by a dull ache. Better, he said, blinking. Serial looked at him with something like respect. Your plan worked, though I advise against repeating it. Plans like mine aren't often safe, Caleb said. The cave was now filled with quiet exhaustion. Different species, different languages, but all breathing the same tired air. Serial stepped closer. I owe you an apology. Caleb looked surprised. I was arrogant, she admitted. I thought your biology was flawed. Now I see you survive not because of your design, but because of your flexibility. Caleb nodded. Sometimes, it's not the backup systems in your body that save you. It's the backup in your mind. Serial's ears twitched thoughtfully. You call it being asymmetric. Yeah, Caleb said. One heart, no backup. But I adapt. I change. That's my redundancy. She smiled. I want to learn. Teach me. Caleb grinned despite the pain. Lesson 1, expect the unexpected. Serial laughed softly. That sounds like human stubbornness. Or winging it, Caleb said. The shelter hummed quietly as the sun rose higher. For now, they had survived. Tomorrow was another day. The shelter was silent except for soft breathing and occasional shuffles. The alien students rested, their exhaustion weighing heavy in the air. Caleb sat on a bench, muscles aching, his single heart pounding irregularly but steady. His body was tired, but his mind was racing. Serial approached quietly. Your healing is remarkable. The tissue regeneration you describe, it's unlike anything we have documented. Caleb shrugged. It's not fast or perfect. Just enough to keep going. Scar tissue isn't like new skin, but it holds. She nodded thoughtfully. Your biology is a paradox. Fragile yet resilient. Inefficient yet effective. Caleb gave a weak smile. That's humans. Serial's amber eyes flicked toward the window. Outside, the alien world of Vidya stretched endlessly, twisted trees, rust-colored sky, and distant mountains wrapped in morning mist. Your plan saved us all, she said. But it was reckless. Caleb rubbed his sore side. Sometimes reckless is the only option. A faint beep came from Glorp's suit. Power levels restoring, he said with relief. The suppression grid will be back online soon. Rescue should arrive within hours. Relief spread through the shelter like warm sunlight. Yet none of them moved. The weight of what had happened kept them rooted. Blue, the mollusk student Caleb had helped, sat nearby, her translucent body still flickering with nervous colors. You saved my life, she said softly. Thank you. Caleb shook his head. We saved each other. Serial sat beside him. Tell me more about your species. How do you survive with so many disadvantages? Caleb thought for a moment. We don't always survive. But we keep trying. We build, we fail, we learn, and we try again. Is that what you call stubbornness? Maybe. Or hope. Serial's eyes narrowed. Hope is a dangerous thing. It can blind you to reality. Caleb smiled. Maybe, but it's also the reason we keep moving forward. Outside, the shelter's walls hummed softly as power flowed back. The emergency systems blinked green. Suddenly, the door hissed open. A rescue team entered, their suits shining with authority. Caleb felt a wave of exhaustion wash over him, but also a flicker of pride. They had survived the impossible. As the aliens prepared to leave, Serial turned to Caleb. I want to understand your world better. Will you teach me? Caleb grinned. Lesson 1, expect the unexpected. Lesson 2, always carry extra glucose. She laughed. I will remember that. As they boarded the shuttle, Caleb looked back at the wild, strange world of Vidya. It was harsh and unforgiving, but it had taught him and his classmates something vital: survival was not about perfection. It was about adapting, fighting, and sometimes, being stubborn enough to keep beating when all odds said to stop. Caleb's single heart pulsed steadily as the ship lifted off. He was human. And that was enough. The shuttle hummed softly as it soared away from Vidya's red surface. Caleb sat quietly, his body aching but his mind alive with new thoughts. Around him, the alien students whispered, their eyes still wide with wonder and respect. Serial sat beside him, her amber eyes studying him carefully. You survived something no one thought possible, she said. How do you explain it? Caleb shrugged. Luck. Stubbornness. And knowing when to break the rules. She smiled faintly. In my world, we rely on perfect design. Backup systems. Redundancy. And I'm saying sometimes, you don't need backups if you can change your plan on the fly. Serial considered this. Flexibility as survival. It is a new idea. Caleb nodded. Exactly. Your species are built to follow rules. We built to bend them. The professor, Glorp, piped in through the speaker. Your biology challenges our theories. A case study that will reshape xenobiology. Caleb rolled his eyes. Glad to help. As the shuttle neared their station, Caleb looked at the stars outside. They were cold, distant, and infinite. Yet here he was, one human, a strange creature among many, proving that the impossible could happen. Back at the university, the news spread fast. Aliens from many species gathered to hear the story of Caleb's single heart, the human who survived with one heart, no backup, and a stubborn will to live. A crowd waited at the docking bay, buzzing with questions and excitement. Caleb stepped down from the shuttle, limping but proud. Cameras flashed. Whispers filled the air. Glorp announced, this is a turning point. Humans have shown that survival is more than biology. It is behavior. Serial approached Caleb, holding a datapad. I have studied 19 survival scenarios from your species. In every case, humans act unpredictably, sometimes irrationally. Yet you survive. Caleb grinned. We're a mess. But we keep going. She nodded. Teach me more. Show me how to think like you. Caleb smiled. Lesson 3, embrace the mess. They walked together through the halls, surrounded by aliens eager to learn. Caleb's body ached, but his spirit burned brighter than ever. He was no longer just a subject to study. He was a teacher, a survivor, a symbol. For all their technology and perfect designs, the aliens learned that sometimes, the greatest strength is simply refusing to quit. And that was the human way. Weeks passed, and Caleb's life at the university changed forever. No longer the oddity, he became a symbol of something deeper, human strength born from struggle, failure, and stubborn hope. Serial became his closest student and friend. She studied everything Caleb shared about human survival, how they adapted when no perfect plan existed, how they fought through pain, how they found strength in weakness. Their lessons were not easy. Caleb's teaching was chaotic and raw. They watched old Earth survival shows, humans building fires from sticks, getting lost, falling, but always getting back up. Serial found it frustrating and inspiring. "You teach through failure," she said once, her amber eyes shining. "Sometimes failure is the only way to learn," Caleb said with a grin. The academic world buzzed with new ideas. The xenobiology department rewrote textbooks. The concept of redundancy expanded beyond biology to behavior and mind. Caleb's asymmetric survival became a new field of study. Yet Caleb remained humble. He still felt the aches of his single heart, the scars of his reckless chase on Vidya, and the quiet fear of his body's limits. But he also carried something stronger, the belief that being human meant surviving not because you were perfect, but because you refused to give up. One evening, as the sun set behind the city's glowing towers, Caleb and Serial stood watching the stars. "Your species," she began softly. "You are not built to last forever. But you last." Caleb nodded. "We don't have backups. But we have something better. We have stubbornness. Hope. And the courage to keep moving." Serial smiled. "You taught me to be asymmetric. And you taught me to see myself through new eyes," Caleb said. They stood together in silence, the distant stars shining bright. No one knew what challenges tomorrow would bring, but Caleb was ready. His single heart beat steady. No backups needed. Because sometimes, survival is about the will to keep beating against all odds. And that was the human way.